Hello and welcome to TrackVia's Turning Ideas into Apps, our low-code TrackVia demo with our presenter today, Brandon Gill. To get started, we have a few housekeeping issues. You have started in listen-only mode. Please stay in that mode so everyone can hear the presentation. If you have any questions, please submit them via the chat window and we'll follow up with those live if we can at the end of the session, and those that we don't, we'll try to follow up in an email. This webinar is being recorded and we'll send you up a follow-up email with that recording within 48 hours. That takes care of all of our housekeeping details. So I will turn this right over to Brandon and enjoy the demo.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Brandon Gill. I'm the manager of our solutions consulting team here at TrackVia. Going to be taking you through a few different items today. We're going to start by just talking a little bit about who we are at TrackVia. We'll talk about what is low-code technology, which is the technology space that TrackVia falls under. Talk a little bit about who can use low-code technology, and then we'll spend a majority of our time actually in a demonstration in a live application where we'll talk a little bit about some common use cases in low-code and show you what the system looks like. So a little bit about the company. TrackVia was founded in 2006, and for a little bit of context, the term low-code, which you'll hear me use quite a bit, is said to have originated around 2005. So we do think of ourselves as a real pioneer in this space. We're headquartered in Denver, Colorado, with around 75 employees and over 350 customers. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, I've highlighted a few of those customers, and I highlight these specific customers not to say, hey, we've got a lot of great customers or anything like that, but really more so I highlight them because they're all doing different things within TrackVia, and they're all in different industries, and that just speaks to the flexibility of the platform and the flexibility of low-code technology as a whole. So we have North Face, who uses us for custom order tracking. So if you order something, they will kind of have a workflow that takes your order and looks at the customization of their jackets and run that through a whole order processing workflow. They took that from 21 days down to 7 days. Stearns Home Loans is a financial services company. They use us for over 20 different applications, over 2,000 users for really everything in the loan origination process, from post-closing to pre-fund audits to everything else you might think of if you've ever gotten a home mortgage or anything like that. Las Vegas Sands is a very large casino group. They use us for anti-money laundering and a host of other security reasons. And Deep Roots Harvest is actually one of our cannabis customers that uses us for really all their operations, everything from shipping and receiving and sales to cultivation of plants. Really, their entire operations, short of their finances, are run on TrackVia. So again, just the different ways you can think about it. It's a very flexible tool. It can be used for many different use cases. So while the use case that we're going to go through today may not fit what you have in mind for the system, likely it can be applied in other areas of the business. So what is low-code technology? Well, if you go and look up the standard textbook definition, you're going to get something like this. It is software that provides a development environment used to create applications through graphical user interfaces and configuration instead of traditional hand-coded computer programming, which is a really long way of saying it's software that allows you to build functional business applications with drag and drop technology. That's how I think about it. That's what TrackVia is all about. We want to empower business users and people that do the work to be able to build applications to make their jobs easier, and we want it to be scalable as well. So if we think about low code in more of a spectrum, here's a little bit about what that spectrum looks like. So on the left-hand side, you have more lightweight tools that I think we're all pretty accustomed to using, things like Excel, Access databases, Google Sheets, stuff like that. Great tools, very powerful tools. You can get by doing a lot on them, but eventually you have a scaling issue. There's always errors in Excel files. You have to email them around, things like that. You don't know who's actually done what. So there's a scalability issue when it comes to working with those at a larger and larger scale. Then on the right-hand side, you have tools like OutSystems and Appian. These are still considered low code, but really I think of them more as developer toolkits. They give you a framework to code around, but you still have to be a programmer in order to really make these systems work effectively. TrackVia really sits right in the middle in what I would consider to be the true low code space. And when I say that, what I mean is you can build very robust business applications in TrackVia using a total drag and drop user interface. You drag a field over, you drag things over to create a dashboard. We'll take a look at some of that here in just a few minutes. But we do also give you the ability to inject code for some more high-level functionality within the system. So we are not a no-code system, we are a low-code system. And That's a subtle distinction, but it is an important distinction as well. And when we think about who can use low code, it's really for everybody, and that's really the beauty of it. We focus on business users here at TrackVia in order to enable them to build these applications because they know the process is best. So we don't necessarily want them to have to ask IT to build things. IT has enough things that they're working on for the most part. So we really want to enable the business to be able to build their own applications. However, if you are an IT professional, you can really take advantage of low code as well. And you can take advantage of TrackVia because you have that background, you have that data mined in order to build these things very quickly. So the IT pros that use TrackVia get trained up really quickly. And it's just another tool in their tool belt to be able to build these applications very quickly for the business. So let's hop into a demo and actually take a look at what TrackVia looks like. And for this demo, I'm going to take you through a facilities audit example. Now again, TrackVia is a very flexible tool. So while we're going through a facilities audit example, which will showcase mobile and workflow and how we move data between different folks, if you're looking at this and you're going, well, this isn't really what I would use it for, that's probably okay. At a high level, what I think of is anytime we're tracking data and we need to move that data to different people or different departments, TrackVia is likely a good solution for you to consider, even though in this case, we're going to focus on an example like this. So for this, we're going to start in the role of an inspector who's going to complete a mobile inspection of a facility. That inspector is then going to assign some tasks to the owner of that facility to follow up on. The owner will then be instantly alerted of these things via an email notification so that they can start to follow up on these tasks. They'll complete those tasks and then they will send it back to the inspector for review. All the while, we have a portfolio director who's able to see real-time data into all of the different facilities that we may manage. We can see things like their overall score, how they're performing, areas of concern, and things like that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into TrackVia. Now, let me start by giving everybody on the call a little orientation to the screen here. So in our top left-hand corner, I have my TrackVia logo. This really serves as a home button that takes me to the main dashboard on whatever application I'm logged into. This can be custom branded, as can the URL up here, so we could put your company's name, your company's logo, so it really looks and feels like it is your own system. Right next to that, you'll notice I'm in an application called Facilities Audit. However, if I hit this drop-down list here, what you're going to see is a bunch of different applications that I have in this particular demonstration environment. So when we talk about the flexibility of low code and the flexibility of TrackVia, again, these are just common use cases that we hear of at TrackVia that allow you to really use the tools we're going to walk through today, but build out whatever you want. So none of these are pre-built. We're not going to try to put you into a bucket. But commonly a lot of our customers do things like asset tracking, document routing, inventory tracking, invoice approvals, production management, project tracking. All of these things can be built using the tools that we're going to walk through today. Below that, I'm logged in as an admin, so I have access to this admin toolbar, and that allows me to have access to really everything within the system. However, it's important to note that we do have very robust roles and permissions so that you can limit what an individual user can see, what they have access to, what they're allowed to do, which can obviously be very important depending on the industry and depending on the data that we're collecting. I've got a few different dashboards here that are going to walk me through our different users. So we have our auditor or our inspector, our manager who's managing the site that we're going to look at, and then our portfolio director who can see all of the reporting as well. And on these dashboards, what you're going to see is different data elements. So I've got a shortcut buttons here. I've got more of a grid type view that has some conditional formatting that lets me know what inspections failed and which ones passed very easily. I can see a map type view of where my inspections have occurred and different things like that. And these dashboards are really meant to give a different experience to the end users that are looking at them so that they can see data that's relevant to them in a nice way that displays it quickly and makes it very visual for the end users. You can have as many dashboards as you'd like, but in my case, we're just going to focus on the 3 today. All right, without any further ado, let's go ahead and actually kick off this workflow and start a facilities audit. Now to do so, I'm going to do this on a mobile device, which I've just dragged onto the screen here. Now at TrackVia, we do have a native mobile application. So if I hit the home button on the iPad here, you're going to see a TrackVia app that I click into. It's downloadable in both the iOS store or the Google Play Store, so we are available on both iOS devices and Android devices. Now, the nice thing about this is anything that we build on the web is automatically going to be available for us on the mobile, so it's very easy to shift between the two. For example, if I want to look at the map of inspections on the mobile, it's going to register the same way that it does on the web. So if you're transitioning between the two a lot, it's very easy to do so. Additionally, we get to take advantage of the mobile device's capabilities. So things like photo capture, barcode scanning, location capture, all of those things are fair game within TrackVia. There's no separate code base to manage, and that also means that if we're offline, we have the ability to capture data offline. So we are a cloud-hosted system here at TrackVia, but if you're ever in an area with bad service, you can still collect your data, and then when you go back into service, it'll all sync back up to the database. So let's go ahead and get started. To do this, I'm going to hit this button to conduct a facilities audit. And when I do so, it is going to bring up a form that's going to start to ask me some basic questions, things like what facility am I at? I can click into this and I can see a whole list of facilities here. You'll see that I can search for them. I can also do a barcode scan for them. And I'm going to say that today we are at Lee's Summit. My audit date and time is another field that I have, and in this case, I've just got this field defaulted, so we can set up different form rules like defaulting fields or show hide rules that really make these forms just as easy as possible for our end users to fill in. I'm going to say who's the auditor, and in this case, let's say it's Ian Inspector. And for what's the audit type, let's say this is a monthly visit. I'm also grabbing the audit location, which is just looking for the location of the mobile device itself, which is sitting at my desk here in Broomfield, Colorado. I'll hit next on this, and it's going to take me now to our audit checklist where I can start to answer some questions about the audit and ultimately get to an audit score and things like that. So here's all the information that we just collected. And now I've got a few different questions and metrics to audit. Now we've seen a couple of these fields, and keep in mind, all these fields are totally customizable. So if this is a relevant use case, but you're saying, well, I would ask different questions or I would have more or less, it's very easy to make changes to add these fields in or edit them or do whatever you might want to do. So in this case, let's answer these relatively quickly. So are all the working areas clean and hazard free? That looks good. Fire extinguishers charged, that's fine. Are the materials and supplies properly stored? We'll say that looks good. And then for this fourth one, are the machines in safe operating condition? I'm gonna say that this is below average. And when I do so, it's going to initiate a show hide rule that's going to then ask me for some comments, and it's gonna ask me to put in an image here. Now these comments I can either type or I can do talk to text. These are my notes. So that can be really handy depending on what kind of situation you're in. If you're wearing gloves or anything like that, again, you can take advantage of the mobile device. I'm also going to grab a photo. I've got my coffee mug sitting in front of me here, so we'll grab a photo of that and say that's the machine that's not doing very well. And I can also draw on these photos to call out any areas of concern. So if I want to call out a particular area, I can do so, and that will keep it within the record there. Now that we have that, let's hit next, which will take us to a review and a sign off. So now I can see all the information that I collected. So there's my audit overview. Here are all of my questions with their relative answers. There's that photo of my coffee mug, and I can see a score total and a score percentage. Now these score totals and score percentages are just calculations I have on the back end that are just weighing the different values of these scores. You can do whatever calculations you may want. Finally, I'll do a sign off. Now we can collect signatures here in TrackVia, but it's important to note we do also have a full audit history in TrackVia, so we can always see who did what, when, and where at any given time within the software. Now we'll say, do we want to issue a follow-up task? So because the machines weren't looking so hot, maybe we want to ask the manager to now do something. Now this is where we can take the workflow a couple of different ways. So if I say no, I don't want to add an action plan task, I'm just going to complete the audit. However, if I say yes, I'm going to then add an action plan task, which is what we'll do here. So this is going to take me to a new form where I can then add these tasks to my actual audit. So I can see this is linked to the audit. I'm going to assign this to one of my managers. In my case, I'm going to assign it to Mike Manager. So we'll just type his name in here and that'll search for it. And then that'll allow me to ultimately assign it to him as long as my search functionality is going well. There we go. So that assigns it to Mike Manager. The assignment date is defaulted to today. I can put in a due date here. Let's say I need it in a few days. The task to complete might be to check the machines. The area to improve is a drop-down list. I'll say it's equipment maintenance. And again, I can leave comments like, please check the machines, Mike. Something like that. Do we want to add another task? In my case, I'm going to say no, and we will just complete that audit. So we went through quite a bit of steps there, but ultimately all we did was we found a nice form. We were able to tie it to a location, collect some information, and assign out a new task to our manager. Now that we've done that, there is a couple of different things that will have happened. The main thing being that Mike might get an alert via email letting him know that he has been assigned to a new task. And so to do something with that task, let's shift over from my facilities auditor dashboard to my regional manager dashboard. Now, again, I'm logged in as an admin right now, so I have access to all of these things. In a real world scenario, my manager might only see this dashboard where the auditor might only see their dashboard. You can permiss people accordingly. But if I shift over here to the view of Mike Manager, what I can see is I can see the task that I've been assigned to. Here's the one that we just did on this calendar type view. I can also see it here sitting in the bucket of not started for task 220. I can also see the facilities that I manage, and I can see a nice map of those facilities as well. And if I'm Mike Manager, I can see the tasks that I need to do. What I might do is I might use my lanes view, or some people call this a Kanban board, to pick this task up, drag it over, and say it's now in progress. I am working on this, and that might send an alert back to my auditor letting them know that I'm doing something with it. If I click into this task, it takes me back to that original form that we filled in as a manager, only now we're seeing it on the desktop, where I can see that the inspector filled in some basic information. I've got my task stages in progress, and I can leave some notes and say, machines are now fixed. I can attach a photo if I want, and of course you can make this process more complex. I've just kept it pretty simple for demonstration purposes. We'll move it to ready for approval, and then that will make that card jump again from in progress to ready for approval. This will send it back over to my inspector. So if we shift back to my inspector type role, I can see that I have the task right here that I can now look into. I can see all the information like the assignment date, the due date, all the information I filled in. I can see how long it took Mike Manager to complete this task. Then I can say I'm going to go ahead and approve this task. I'll hit save changes on that. So now when I jump out, because these are tasks that need approval and I've now approved them, it will fall out of my working queue. So we've covered quite a bit in the first 17 minutes or so of this webinar. We've gone through what is low code, and now we've seen a pretty robust but still fairly straightforward example of collecting information on a form, assigning that information out to one of our facilities, failing that inspection, being able to assign the fixes for that failure to a manager, having that manager do those fixes, and then push all that information back to the inspector for approval. So there's a lot of workflow happening here, a lot of data capture happening here. Now, for the remaining time that we have, there's a few other things that I want to focus on. So we're going to step out of the role of our workflow and our storyline here. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our reporting capabilities at TrackVia, as well as show an example of making changes to the system and show you what it looks like to make changes in a low-code environment. So if I shift over to this portfolio reporting dashboard, you're going to see some different examples of some of the reports we can generate. So I can break things down by market. So what's my average score by market? I can see that my market in Georgia does a lot better than my market in Illinois. I can break these things down by my individual facilities, so I can see all my facilities and their relative scores. I can see which open tasks I still have. I can see which areas need the most improvement for all my facilities. I can see my overall monthly trend here. So you're seeing just different examples of ways we can track data. Now, the other important thing is all this data updates in real time. So for example, I can see my map view here, which is going to list all of my facilities and their relative markets are color-coded. And so if I start to drill down into my Lee's Summit facility, which is right here, I can see Lee's Summit on the map. I can see where it's at, but I could also click into it to get a good overview of what are the stats on Lee's Summit specifically. So I've got a breakdown of who the manager is, what the address is, where it's located, the overall score that it's getting, the average of all the scores. And if I come down here, here's the one that we just did today. I can click into that. I can see all the information here. We can click down into here and see there's the photo of the mug that I took. So you can really bring this information down to the lowest level needed in order to understand what's going on. So you get that good visibility into your data. And that's really the beauty of TrackVia. It allows you to track the data, it allows you to then do something with that data, and then you get those good visualizations so that you can actually learn from that data and know where you need to improve your processes even further. Now, the other thing I want to take a few minutes on is actually showing everybody how we make changes in a low code space, because it really is very easy and it's meant to be designed for business users for a drag and drop functional system. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply take a field and I'm going to add it onto a table, and then we're going to take that field and add it onto a form, and then we'll see how easy it is to make those changes in TrackVia and bring them to life. So to do that, I'm going to start on our tables dropdown. Now, underlying all of these applications in TrackVia is a relational database. So that means it's made up of a series of tables, and we can see those tables here. If I go down to my audits table and I hit this little pencil icon, it's going to let me edit this table. Now, this takes us to our table editor. Now, on the left-hand side of our table editor, what I see are all the different field types I can use. So text and number fields I'm going to type into typically. We've got drop-downs and checkboxes, which help to keep our data very clean. We see some date and time fields. We see some specialty fields like emails and images and documents, that location field we took a look at earlier, and then all the calculated fields that we might use similar to Excel or Google Sheets or something like that. You can do all those same calculations in TrackVia. In the middle is all of the raw data that's being captured on this table. Now, we might not expose all this data to our end users. If I scroll down, you'll see that I've got some different calculated fields that maybe we don't need our end users to see, but in its most raw sense, this is what's being collected on this table. Now, if I want to add a field onto this table, all I have to do is say, what field type do I want? And in my case, I'm going to use a drop-down list. And I just pick it up and I drag it over and I drop it in place there. So there's no coding required to create a new field. There's nothing crazy that has to happen. You just say, what field do you want? Drag it over and drop it in place. And I'll give this a name, and let's just say we want a priority for our inspection. And we'll list as high, medium, or low as my options. We'll go ahead and hit save on that. And that's really all it takes to add a new field onto a table. So this is now a new piece of information that we can start to collect within TrackVia. Now, of course, we want it to be easy for end users to collect this information, so I want to add this onto a form in order to make that happen. So similar to my tables, if I go to my forms dropdown, I can click here, and I can see that my forms are broken up by table. So if I go down to my audits, I can simply click into this form here, which is where we're collecting that initial audit information. It takes us to our form editor, which is going to look pretty similar. On the left-hand side of our form editor are all the different field types I can use. On the right-hand side is how I want the form to actually be laid out. So I've got my priority there. I can just pick this up, drag it over, drop it in place here. I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller. I can put a spacer in here to make the form look a little nicer. I can change the color of the form, and then we can put different form rules in place as well. You'll see that this field is defaulted, this field is required. So I can click into the individual field and say, maybe I want the priority to be required on this form. I can hit done on that and save that. And now it'll save my priority as a new field will collect, and it will be required whenever we kick off a workflow. Now, in my case, I did all of this in a production environment. So if I go back out to my dashboard here and we conduct a facilities audit, it is now available to me to fill in this priority. I can see the options that I had there. And if I try to hit next, it actually won't allow me to because I have two required fields that I simply have not filled in yet. So once again, we've gone through a lot in the last 23 minutes, but to recap, we've learned a little bit about what low code is, what TrackVia is specifically, and we've gone through an example where on a mobile device, we're able to conduct an audit, ask some questions, roll all that information up to a location, assign some tasks out to a different individual, have that individual complete those tasks, and then we've seen how easy it is to actually make changes in TrackVia and make changes in a low-code technology in general. Now we have about 6 minutes left. I do want to open it up to a couple of different questions that we've received, but real quickly before I do that, let me come back to our presentation just to recap a couple of different things that will happen. We'd speed through that here. A couple of final notes. As Michelle mentioned earlier, you will be receiving an email with a recording of this webinar, and that'll be sent within 48 hours. We do also put all of these recordings up on our YouTube channel, so if you want to go back and look at any of the older ones that we've done, we do different examples every month, so you'll be able to see some of those. We do also value your feedback. So at the end of this webinar, there will be a small survey that will pop up that will ask us some basic questions. There's like 3 questions there. So if you don't mind filling that out, it always helps us to make sure these webinars are staying relevant, and then make sure that we kind of bring you the best every month. Additionally, if you want any more immediate information, feel free to email myself. I've listed my email up here. It's pretty simple, just brandon.gill@trackvia.com. And I'll make sure that I either get your question answered myself or I get it in the right hands so that we can get that question answered for you. So now for the last couple of questions that we do have here. One of the questions that I got is, do you have any area to do a development type environment? And this is a really good question. It's a very common question that we sometimes get. So when it comes to development environments, we do have the ability to create a sandbox of the application. So it basically takes a copy of the app and it replicates it entirely so that you can make changes in it and test anything that you may want to test in there. And then if you want to, you can actually make it promotable. So you can do a promotable sandbox that will allow you to take whatever you've done there and promote it into production. So that's kind of a dev environment that we might think of with traditional coding, but we can do it here in TrackVia so you don't throw anybody off in production. A couple of other questions that came in. One of them says, what is the performance like when dealing with large and complex data sets and processes? Is there a way to improve the navigation speed and processing speed? This is a great question. So when it comes to how we build things within TrackVia, performance as far as large data sets really is not an issue. We have customers that have over 10 million records within TrackVia and their process works just fine. As far as improving the overall navigation speed and processing speed, because underlying all of these applications is a relational database, you can get bogged down a little bit if your overall database structure is not set up correctly. So if you have too many tables, too many relationships, your database is not normalized appropriately, that can cause some performance issues, but it really won't cause too many performance issues just because of the way that our technology is architected, but it can cause some slowdowns if you just have, tables that lead to nowhere and things like that. So some basic database knowledge is helpful, but as long as that's in place, you really won't have any slowdowns regardless of how large or complex the data set is. But that's a great question. It's something that comes up quite a bit. One final question that we have, and then I think we'll be just about out of time, is can you export the results into Excel? And the simple answer here is yes. So there's a few different ways we can bring data out of TrackVia or push data into TrackVia. We can both import from Excel, so we can take a big Excel file and we can bring it into TrackVia to get your app stood up quickly and get that data into the system. You can also export any of this data from TrackVia into a CSV and then do whatever you want with it from there. Additionally, I want to talk a little bit about our integrations capabilities because bringing in Excel files and exporting out Excel files can be a really good way to move data. But we do also have very robust integrations capabilities at TrackVia. So we have an open and bidirectional API that allows us to tie into other systems to push or pull data into or out of TrackVia. And we also have partnered with another company called Workato. We are the only OEM partner that they have, and what they are is they're known as an iPaaS solution. So it's an integration platform as a service that allows you to build integrations between TrackVia and other enterprise systems like SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, really any large enterprise system you could think of, they have connectors into. And we can build those integrations without writing any code, without necessarily tapping into our API. So it kind of fits our low-code methodology of TrackVia to be able to build those integrations in a way that allows business users to build them and still have them run however you need them to run. So a couple different ways we can move data in and out, but the short answer to can we export results into Excel is yes, we can. All right, there's a couple more questions that we have, but we are just about at the half-hour mark, which will bring it into our time. As mentioned, there will be a little poll that will pop up that if you guys don't mind answering a couple of questions, it always helps to make these webinars relevant. And then after we do that, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And thank you all for joining us today.